Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited for today's video. At first I was a little nervous. I had a little bit of an anxiety because pulling all my books out, or some of my books out, and having to reorganize them. Not only that, having to talk about them a year later is a little bit challenging, but bear with me, okay? So today we're going to talk about all the books that I've read that I gave 5 stars to that ended up making it on my favorites list of 2023. I'm actually very proud, even though I did not make my Goodreads goal. My Goodreads goal was to read 100 books last year. I did not do that, but considering some of my worst months, I actually did read 77 books, and I'm happy to say that 36 of those books were 5-star reads. So, as I was saying, I read 77 books and I ended up reading 29,588 pages. Like, that is insane to me, and I'm just so happy that I read that much. Even though I didn't make my Goodreads goal, I'm just so happy that I was able to still read that much. I know what you're thinking. This is going to be a very long video. No, my friends, it's not, because I am not going to talk about all the 35 books that I gave 5-star ratings to. No, otherwise we would be here literally all day long. I'm just going to talk about the 12 books that made it onto my list of favorite books of 2023, which happened to be 5-star reads. The way that I categorized this is I categorized it by genre. So we have some romance, we have some fantasy, we have some thriller, and we also have one horror book that made it to the list. The first 7 books are in no particular order. I just organized them by genres. But the last 5 books are basically the books that made it to my top 5. I will start with number 5, which is the lowest in that list, and I'll work myself up to the number 1 book of 2023 for me. So, without further ado, let's begin. We're going to start off with romances. The first book I want to talk about, and keep in mind, for 2023, I did read or binge some series, whether it's fantasy or romances. I was able to binge, fully complete some of those series that year. I'm not going to talk about the entire books in the series. I'm only going to talk about one specific and particular book that stood out to me out of the rest of the books in that particular series, if that makes sense. So the first book I want to talk about is a contemporary romance, and that is going to be Twisted Hate by Anna Hung. This book is part of the Twisted Hate series. There are 4 books in that series, and I absolutely loved every single one. Every book in that series was a 5-star read, but this one is the one that stuck out to me the most because it's a very, very well-written enemies to lovers. Good old enemies to lovers with so much sexual tension and so much angst. I absolutely loved it. I devoured it. I ate it up. This follows Jules and Josh. Josh is studying to become a doctor, and he's also very cocky because he knows he's that good. Jules is the best friend of the female main character in the first book in the series. They despise each other. They hate each other. They can't stand each other. They've known each other for years and years. They've practically grown up together because Jules is... I forget the other girl's name in the first book in the series, but Jules is her best friend. They've always been around each other, but they've absolutely despised each other. It's their romance, and it's so good. The banter back and forth is impeccable. The tension that you feel between these two is immaculate. I absolutely love this book so much. Let me just read you the back, just because I read this in the beginning of 2023. I only remember certain bits and pieces of some of these books. Gorgeous, cocky, and fast on his way to becoming a hotshot doctor, Josh Chen has never met a woman he couldn't charm except for Jules Ambrose. The beautiful redhead has been a thorn in his side since they met, but she also consumes his thoughts in a way no woman ever has. When their animosity explodes into one unforgettable night, he proposes a solution that'll get her out of his system once and for all, an enemies with benefits arrangement with simple rules. No jealousy, no strings attached, and absolutely no falling in love. That's all I'm gonna read, and it's so good. The steamy scenes in here were just chef's kiss. It was really good. Again, highly recommend. I highly recommend the entire series, but this is my favorite book out of all of them, just because of the tension, the angst, the banter, the fact that they hate each other but not really. you know, and I just loved it. I really enjoyed it. Next up on my list, I want to talk about this book because I love it so dearly, but I know that it's not everybody's cup of tea. I am still recommending it, and obviously it still made it to this list because I just ate it up. I absolutely enjoyed reading about these characters, and I loved everything about this book. That is Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. Listen, if you want a romance that will sweep you off your feet, that will tug at your heartstrings, that will make you root for the characters, then don't read this book, because this is an example of a severely toxic relationship. But the way that Jessa Hastings writes and wrote this book is so perfect. The characters are flawed, the relationship is toxic, there is some cheating involved, but I absolutely loved it just because of the writing style. The writing style was gorgeous, it was beautiful, it was compelling. I could not put this book down, and it was painful. This is one of these books that is painful to read, but you just can't stop reading it because it's so good, it's so juicy, it's just that good that you just feel guilty reading it because it's about a toxic relationship, but you can't help it. This story follows Magnolia and BJ, and they've literally grown up together. They are very rich, privileged, snobby kids set in London. So the atmosphere of this is immaculate. It's perfection in a book. They have a small group of friends that are just like them, prestigious, rich, ritzy, snobby, privileged. Magnolia and BJ have practically grown up together. They've known each other for quite some time. They've gone to the same schools together, and they happen to be best friends as well. And it's their romance, the turmoils of it, and the drama that's filled with it. The fact that Magnolia pretends to date other people to spite him, and BJ sleeps around just so he can get Magnolia out of his head, which makes no sense whatsoever, but it works. It works for them. Two people that shouldn't be together but work so perfectly in this turmoil of a romance. They work so well together. I can't explain it. I will not stop raving about the fact that this book was so beautifully written. Not only does it make you hate the characters, you know, because they're both being very dumb when it comes to their relationship, and neither of them likes to communicate to one another. Instead, they play these mind games where they pretend they don't like each other and they do things to each other to spite each other. But the way that it's written, it's just, I can't explain it. I can't explain it. If you can't read about toxic relationships, then I don't recommend it, but I say just try it, give it a couple chapters, and I know that you'll be hooked because this book was that good. I'm just so obsessed with the writing style in here. It makes you feel every type of emotion that you could possibly feel for these characters. It makes you love them, it makes you hate them, it makes you root for them, it makes you want them to never be together again. It's just everything. When a book allows you to feel all of those emotions and to have a roller coaster of emotion, I feel that makes an incredible author, an incredible writer, and just an amazing book, despite the fact that it's about an imperfect, flawed set of characters, a very toxic relationship. I just couldn't get enough, and I can't wait to read the rest of the books in the series. I've heard that it just gets better and better, but worse and worse, meaning your heart will break more for these characters. So definitely highly recommend this, guys. I know it might not be your cup of tea, or you might not think so, but go in it just knowing that you will be so glued onto the pages because of the way that Jessa Hastings writes her books. I loved it so much. Next up, I want to talk about a book that actually really surprised me because I did not think I was going to like this book that much, but I ended up being obsessed and loving it and having such a great time reading it, and that is You Again by Kate Goldbeck. I loved this book, and if I had to explain this book in a quick sentence, it would be that this book is kind of a retelling of When Harry Met Sally. And that's pretty much it. And if you love that movie, then you will definitely love this book. In this book, we're following Ari and Josh. Ari just likes to have fun, doesn't want to be in a committed relationship. She likes to hook up with people and not commit to anyone. Josh is a hopeless romantic. He believes in love. He wants to be in love. He wants to be in a relationship, and he wants to build that with somebody. He's also very uptight and he likes things a certain way. And I love anytime anybody writes a male character like that, I just eat it up. I love when the man is strict, has a stick up his butt, wants everything done precisely his way, has to have all his clothes color coordinated and everything folded neatly. I love it when the girl is just wild and carefree and just happy, go lucky, just wanting to have a good time. This is a very good enemies to friends to lovers romance. It is over 400 pages, but you will not feel that because it was so good. The reason why Josh and Ari hate each other is because they find out one night that they're sleeping with the same woman. And from there, they don't get along. What's also very interesting about this book is that it does take place in a 15-year time frame. For some reason, after that night when they parted ways, after they found out they were sleeping with the same woman, every 3 years, it seems like they seem to bump into each other somewhere. At an event, in a bookstore, at a cafe, somewhere. And I just love it because you know that these two couldn't be right for each other because they're completely total polar opposites. But they work. They work and they work so well. And I really love Ari's attitude. I think she's very sarcastic and fun. She also throws in a lot of jokes in there that were very fun. I remember this one part where that night where they found out they were sleeping with the same woman. She's like, I guess I'll see you around in the future. And he's like, you will not be seeing me ever again. And then she says to him, or I'll just sleep with your girlfriend again. Who knows? And he gives her the dirtiest look. And she's like, kidding. I'm just kidding. I really loved that part of the book. I thought it was funny. I thought it showed Ari's character very well, and it just made me love her even more. So yes, highly recommend this book. It was so good. You will enjoy it, and you will have so much fun reading it. So I tried to not include almost every single book that I read in December, okay? But I can't help it, guys. I read a lot of 5-star reads in December, so I only included, for your sake, so I didn't sound like a broken record, I only included 2 books from December's wrap-up that I absolutely had to make in this list because I loved them so much. And also keep in mind, these books, even though I had 39 5-star reads this year, these are the books that impacted me the most, that made me feel a certain way, that I really remember enjoying and having such an amazing experience reading that just couldn't get out of my head. I couldn't stop thinking about. So you're welcome. I narrowed it down to 12 books instead of 39, okay? Anyways, back to our regular scheduled programming, and the next book I want to talk about is One Puzzling Afternoon by Emily Critchley. This is a mystery book about an 80-year-old woman, Eddie, who is slowly losing her memory. 40 years ago, her best friend Lucy went missing. The book is about Eddie trying to solve the mystery of her missing friend and what happened to her, because it kind of ended up being a cold case because nobody found the body. She just disappeared out of thin air, and at a certain point they just stopped looking for her. So before Eddie loses her memory, she has made it a goal for herself to try to solve the mystery and find her friend, or find out what exactly happened to her. I ate this book up so much. And again, I will say, this is not like action-packed. It's not thrilling. It's not a whodunit. It is a mystery, but it's so interesting to read about. It's so fast-paced in a sense where you are just hooked from the very first page of this book. I found it so interesting and compelling, and I couldn't stop reading. I binged this book. I've never had this in my life happen to me. As far as my reading goes, I have never sat and binged a book in one sitting, and this book did that for me. Chapters are short. Every chapter ends in almost like a little mini cliffhanger where you just have to keep reading to find out more. It also has 2 timelines. It takes place in the past, 40 years ago, when Eddie and Lucy met, how they became friends, and then it fast forwards to the now where Eddie's losing her memory and she's just trying to solve her friend's mystery. She's just trying to find her missing friend. It is so captivating, and it's not like it's beautifully written or anything like that, but it was so good. I don't know why. At first, when I read the synopsis of this, which doesn't really give you much, so I recommend you just going in blindly, I wasn't very excited about this at all. But as soon as I started reading it, I just could not stop. I became addicted to it and trying to find the mystery behind, where's Lucy? What happened to her? What happened on that very last day she was last seen? This book is just so good. It is so juicy. It is full of secrets and betrayal and just very, very interesting. I really highly recommend this. Okay, so obviously we've moved on to the thriller and horror. So the horror is going to be the last one I talk about. I'm just going to start slowly talking about the thrillers that made it onto this list. Next up is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. I mean, come on, if you haven't read this book already, and if you have a goal to read at least one thriller this year, please read this one. It was hyped for a reason. It has good ratings for a reason, and it has made it onto this list of mine for a reason. So in this story, we're following a married couple, Amelia and Adam. Their marriage is not going very well. It's actually a turmoil marriage, and it's not going very well. So Amelia wins this kind of raffle at work where they get to spend a weekend in this secluded retreat in Scotland. Just the atmosphere of this alone, the fact that they're in a secluded area in the middle of nowhere during the snowy season is perfection. Okay, perfection. So they get to that cottage and the story goes from there. Things just start getting crazy. I love it so much. I love a good thriller that has to do with turmoil marriages. I just think they're just so fascinating and interesting to read about, because this is the one person that you sworn your love to, that you vowed that you will love for the rest of your life. So why is it that in thrillers, most of these turmoil marriages, the couple is very deceiving, they deceive each other, they lie to each other, they go behind each other's backs, and it's just so juicy. I love reading about it. You also get Adam and Amelia's point of view, and I'm gonna tell you this without giving you any spoilers. If you think you got it figured out, guess again, because you're not going to figure this out. I was mind blown by the end. I had no idea, did not see that coming, and it was just such a wild, fun ride. I highly recommend this. This was so good. Next up, I want to talk about a disturbing book that I just devoured and enjoyed so much. If you want to read something a little bit on the more disturbing, sick side, but not really a horror yet, then I really recommend this one. And that is Behind Her Eyes by Sarah Pinbrough. I have yet to watch the Netflix series, but this was so freaking good. Oh my gosh. Again, one of those psychological thrillers that you have no idea that it's happening to you. You have no idea. You didn't see it coming. There is no way that you were going to be able to guess any plot twist, anything. This book was so good. This book feels like I'm literally getting the rug pulled from underneath me and basically landing face first on the floor, on the tile. That is exactly how this book made me feel. It gives you the most adrenaline rush in a psychological way. It's just so good. I don't even know how to explain it. It gives you so much adrenaline, so much anxiety. You just don't want to stop reading. The chapters are also very short as well. You also get dual points of views, and it's just so good. It is so good. Also about another turmoil marriage, and I loved it. I loved it so much. So I'm just going to read you the back because I don't want to give anything away, but please do read this book, okay? Louise, a single mom and secretary, is deeply embarrassed when she discovers that the man who sweet-talked and kissed her in the bar on a rare night out is her new boss, David. And Adele, new to town and lonely, who invited Louise for a coffee after they bumped into each other on the street. Adele is David's wife. From the outside, David and Adele look like a picture-perfect husband and wife. But then why is David so controlling? And why is Adele so scared? As Louise is drawn further into David and Adele's orbit, she uncovers more puzzling questions. The only thing that is crystal clear is that something in this marriage is very, very wrong. But Louise can't guess how wrong or how far a person might go to protect their marriage's secret. I'm just gonna end with this. Nothing is what it seems. You will not guess the plot twist. You'll never see it coming, and it is going to basically punch you in the gut. Okay, and the last book I want to talk about in this genre category is a horror. Surprisingly, a horror. Now, I'm not a horror girly. I don't like to read horror that much. I'm very picky and selective when it comes to my horror because horror is a very triggering and disturbing and sad and tragic and depressing. No offense to those of you that love horror. It's not that I don't love it. I just can't hang with the cool kids when it comes to not feeling the worst. Sorry guys, I ran out of space on my SIM card and so I had to change it. So I'm very sorry if there's a slight angle change in this video. But anyways, what I was saying is I'm not a horror girly. I don't just pick up horrors every month. Okay, I'm very selective and I'm just one of those people that every time I read a horror, I either feel disgusting, depressed, sad, like I want to cry, or all of the above. Just because I can't hang with you cool kids, okay? I can't hang with you guys that absolutely binge horrors because they're just over the top extreme, okay? So this one, I'm happy to say, did make it on my list because it was just so good. So well written. It's written by 2 male authors and I was so impressed how they wrote the female character, how her personality was described, and just everything. Everything about this book is so compelling, so beautifully written, so descriptive. I just will talk on and on about this book. If you're going to read a horror this year, this is one that you should add onto your list. And if you pair it with the audiobook, like, you will be in horror heaven in the best way ever. So that book is Old Country by Matt and Harrison Corey. This book was so good. This book put me on a horror journey where I wanted to read more horror books, to be honest with you. I wanted to be that person to add a horror book onto my TBR every month. Did I do that? No. But this book started it all for me and I just regret not reading it sooner, to be honest with you. We're following Harry and Sasha and they're a young married couple from the city. They decide that they want to leave that all behind and have a ranch and live off the grid in the middle of nowhere and just live off the land, which is my dream, by the way. Live off the land and the animals and the vegetation and whatever they produce themselves. So they decide to do that in Idaho. Okay, at first they have no idea why this cute little quaint rundown little farmhouse is so cheap with, I don't know, 50 acres of land. They have no idea why it's so affordable and cheap, but they took the offer and they decided to go on this adventure together. And then I think a week or so, or maybe a couple days later, they meet their very lovely neighbors, Dan and Lucy, an older couple who have been established there for quite some time. They have been at their ranch for years and years and have seen everything that you could possibly see during that time. You know, they invite them over for dinner and they let them know that there's something about your house that we want to talk to you about, and the story goes from there. Okay, I'm not going to say any more. I'm not going to say any more because I want you to be just as mind blown as I was when I read this book, because it's that good. Not only is it just this creepy atmospheric environment, the fact that they're secluded in the middle of nowhere and so many off the wall things happen in this book, but it's also beautifully written. I am such a sucker for a book that is so captivating when you read it. It is just, it does it for me. Okay, it does it for me. The plot doesn't matter, you know, the storyline doesn't matter, but if the book is written so well, it's everything to me. It's everything. And also the fact that this is a horror book and it's written in this way where it's lyrical and it's just so like, it's just one of those books that just hooks you, you know, like reels you in, hooks you, and makes you feel like a certain way. It's perfect. So I read this. If I haven't mentioned it, I paired this with the audio, and let me just tell you, there is, oh, I just don't want to say anything without giving anything away, but just read the book, okay? I'm not gonna say anything. There's this part in this book that is so dang scary that I literally could not read it at night because I was spooked out of my mind. I couldn't read it at night. It's also very good that it's dual POV. You get Harry and Sasha's points of views. So that is very, very interesting. I love getting in the mind of both characters to see what they're thinking. And it was just so good. It was everything for me. Best horror I've ever read yet in my life so far. So now we're moving on to my top 5 books of the year. I'm going to start with number 5 and work myself up. These are fantasy, romance, and that's pretty much it. First up, number 5 is Legends in Latte by Travis Baldree. I mean, how could I not add this book onto my list, you guys? This book gave me such cozy vibes. It made me feel warm and happy. The atmosphere of coffee and food and pastries, oh, it's perfection. It's there. It's just amazing. It's so cute and I love it. The characters are adorable. I love the main character, and the funny thing is that I don't normally read books like this with monsters in it because it's just not my thing yet. You know, Oh no, I lied, okay? After reading this, it's my thing, okay? It's definitely my thing. And this was done so well. And this book is about Liv, who happens to be an orc, and she wants to turn in her sword and not battle anymore and not hunt people anymore. And she decides that she's gonna do that. She wants to start a new life, start fresh. So she moves into this cozy, quaint, small, cute little town, and she opens up a coffee shop. And in the coffee shop, nobody in the town, along with herself, know how to make coffee, know that there's different types of coffees, nothing. You watch her grow as a character and develop into this coffee connoisseur, and you see her play with recipes and make an iced coffee, a vanilla latte, and it's just so wonderful. This is a book that you should read maybe in the colder season, in the holiday season, like maybe fall, winter. The vibes are there 100%, and it's so good. I also listened to the audio and paired it with the book. It's perfection because Travis Baldry himself narrates the book, and I just love it. So as I was saying, she opens up this coffee shop, and in there she has to hire an assistant. You know, there's a little bit of romance going on in there. She also hires this rat. His name is Thimble. This is the cutest name ever, okay? And he's a rat that knows how to bake. And so he bakes cinnamon rolls and croissants and scones. Well, Liv, I forget this character's name. I think her name is Violet. They tag team it and they come up with recipes together, and it's just so wonderful, you guys. It is like a warm, cozy hug. Makes you want to eat everything. There's such great descriptions on the coffee they make, on the baked goods that they do. It's just perfect. And it's so cute too because every single chapter has like a cute little illustration on it, and it was just everything. I can't wait to read Bookshops and Bone Dust so I can just experience that same warm, cozy feeling that I got when I read this book. It was so good. I loved it so much. Next up, I want to talk about this chunky book that I think everybody should read, even though you have to be extremely patient because it is the longest slow burn of a book of a romance you will ever read in your life. That is The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. If you haven't read any of Mariana Zapata's books, this is how I will explain this author to you. She writes very slow burn romances. So slow to the point that the characters really don't get together until maybe the last 80 pages of the book. But when they do though, it's so magical. It's beautiful. It's just everything. And I really appreciate that about this author because I don't always want to read a quick, fast-paced rom-com or a romance. I don't really enjoy romances where the couple gets together right away or it's like literally love at first sight type of thing. I like it when the characters have more depth to them. You get to see how they are and how they grow as characters together and apart. You get to follow them along their lives and how they deal with certain problems and situations in their lives before they can actually get together. It's just perfection in a book. I love it. I love all of her books. I think this is my second Mariana Zapata book. Yeah. And I love this. This is the biggest, thickest book that she has, but it is so good. We're following Vanessa and Aiden. Aiden is a professional football player and Vanessa is his assistant. Now she has been working for him for quite some time. I want to say 2 years, but he has just been the biggest ass to her, and I'm sorry I'm gonna say that, but the biggest, grumpiest ass to her that a person could be, especially to her because she makes sure that she goes above and beyond to remember his birthday. She does so many things for him. She meal preps for him, she cooks for him, she does his laundry, she goes above and beyond. And so Vanessa doesn't feel appreciated by him at all. She doesn't feel like he cares about her. So one day she just was fed up and she up and leaves, and the way that she left, the way that she quit was so epic, okay? Almost something that I would normally do in the work environment just because I have no patience when it comes to certain things. And it just reminded me of me. Was it a little childish? Maybe, but I enjoyed it. It was so epic. I loved reading that scene. So she quits, you know, she leaves. And then I believe maybe a month later, Aiden shows up at her front door, making her a proposition that she can't refuse. And the story goes from there. It's very grumpy sunshine. She's very happy-go-lucky, sunshine of a character, and he's very grumpy, uptight, closed off, literally stoic, a man that says maybe 3 words, doesn't acknowledge you at all, but it's perfect. Their romance is perfect. This book is perfection. I highly recommend it. Oh, and also don't be afraid of how big and chunky it is, because Mariana Zapata, if she knows something so well, she knows how to write these characters. Her stories are very interesting. Her books never feel like they're a drag. They never feel like they're that long. Just keep in mind that if you're going to read one of her books, know that the characters don't get together for a very long time, but when they do, she makes it so worth it. She makes the wait so worth it. Coming in at number 4, let's talk about the second book that's from my December wrap-up, and that is The Scarlet Alchemist. You know, if I hadn't really explained until I'm blue in the face on how much I loved this book, I love it so much, okay? This is a YA fantasy. It follows Zilan Feng, who lives with her aunt and uncle and her 2 cousins. They're very poor. They live in the South. The South is known for its poverty. Her aunt and uncle own, I believe it's a clay shop or some kind of shop. However, their business is not making that much money. In order to help her family and help with the bills, have everything stay afloat, Zilan practices alchemy. Now, in this world, you are allowed to practice alchemy, very small doses of it, meaning if you want to make your rotted fruit ripe again, you can do that. If you want to dry your clothes by using alchemy, you could do that. But Zilan, in order to help her family, she practices illegal alchemy, and that is resurrecting people from the dead for an amount of money. The interesting thing about this character is that not everybody is blessed with this gift where you can resurrect the dead, but she can, and she uses that as her benefit in order to make ends meet for her family. Her dream is to go to school and become the world's best alchemist. And when you do pass your exams and you do pass the trials that they give you and become the world's greatest alchemist, you are then privileged to live in the palace and be the palace's royal alchemist, which obviously you make a lot of money and you are surrounded by those type of people. That's basically what the story is about. I really liked Zilan as a character. I think she is feisty and she's fiery and she's fun and she's snippy, but it's so fun to read about her because she's very bold and brave and courageous. She's not afraid to tell you no, even if you're rich and you're from a privileged side of the world. She does not care. She's ruthless at times and she's just so resilient. I loved that about her. This also has some Mandarin words and it also has some Asian literature, so it's very interesting to learn about that as well. And I also paired this with the audio, and the narrator of this book, the way that she narrates this book sounds like a beautiful melody to your ears. Her voice is beautiful and soothing and relaxed, and I just had such a great time reading this book. Also, another thing that I found very interesting, which I also talked about in my December wrap-up, was that in this world, the very privileged rich people are young forever, and they stay young by doing one thing, by literally physically eating solid gold pieces. To me, that is so interesting. It is so interesting to read about, and back in the day, this was what was believed. There was an empress and she did a lot of bad things, and it was so interesting to read about her too, and how conniving and just bad this person was, and the fact that it's based off of a real person, a real empress back in the day, is just so mind-blowing to me. She did what she did to certain people just to get to the top of the food chain, you know? Everything about this book was very interesting. I loved it. There was also parts of this book where, because she's resurrecting the people from the dead, the way that the bodies were given to her and delivered to her, it's very gory and descriptive, and you can literally see the corpse because it's explained and described in such great detail. You need to read this book. It's part of a series. I don't know when the second book's gonna come out, but I can't wait because I was very happy and content with the ending, and I just can't wait to see where else this goes. Coming in at number 2 on my list is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I mean, I I don't know what to say about this book. I blush and I want to cry and I want to make everybody read this book because it's so, so good, okay? It's about two reporters who work in the same newspaper agency who are basically rivals competing for the same promotion. They despise each other. They don't like each other at all. It's Iris and Roman, and Roman comes from a very privileged background. You know, he is working in his father's newspaper agency. He kind of has the upper hand. And there's Iris, who is barely getting by, who has holes in her shoes, who is trying to make ends meet and take care of her mother while her brother is out to war. It's their romance. This is also historical. There's a war going on right now between two gods. Iris's brother, Forrest, gets sent to the war. The whole story picks up from that point where Iris comes across a typewriter that she has no idea is magical, and she tries to write to her brother, but her brother is not the one that's writing to her back, and it just goes from there, you guys. It's so beautiful. The letters that these two characters write back and forth with each other are just so beautiful. So, oh my gosh, it just tugs at my heart. You can feel the love that they have for each other right from the very first couple of letters that they exchange with each other, and it's just so romantic. It's beautiful. It's not very heavy on the fantasy, just has just enough to keep you compelled and interested. It's not heavy on the world building either. It just has a little bit of everything. The romance in this book is absolutely the forefront of this story, and I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm actually working on finishing Ruthless Vows, which is the last installment of this enchantment letters series, I think it's called, and I'm sad. I'm sad because I love this world. I love these characters. I love the magical elements of the magical typewriters, and I love their romance. It's so beautiful. It is just everything you want in this type of fantasy romance. I loved it. I highly recommend it. Again, pick this up sooner than later because you won't regret it. Coming in at number 1, I don't think you guys are going to be surprised because I feel like this series has changed my life, my soul, my everything, my standards on male characters, my standards on romance. Everything has changed in me because of this series, okay? And this book in particular, and that is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. I mean, are we surprised, you guys? Are we surprised that this made it to my number 1? I mean, I don't think I am. I cannot shut up about this series. I cannot shut up about Sarah J. Maas. I cannot shut up about any of these characters and what they have done to my soul. This is the second book in the series. It's a 5-book series, and this was my favorite one out of all of them. No surprise there because this is a lot of everybody's favorite just because of the theme of this book and what this book is mainly about is just so breathtaking to me. The first book in the series, Aatar, A Court of Thrones and Roses, is almost kind of like a Beauty and the Beast retelling slightly. You only get little Easter eggs of it in there, but it follows Feyre, who is 18 years old at the time. She's trying to help her family stay afloat. They're very poor. Something happened in the past where they have been ripped out of their lives that they had. She's basically trying to be the breadwinner for her dad and her 2 sisters. One day she's in the woods and she's hunting for dinner and she ends up accidentally killing a wolf. That's all I'm gonna say. The story goes from there. If there's one fantasy series that you should read this year, you should definitely read Aatar, okay? It is so good. I love every single thing about every single character in these books. Even the ones I hated, even the ones I did not like at all and I never wanted to root for. Sarah J. Maas is so good to the point where she will, by the end of the book or by the end of the series, she will make you love these characters and root for them and just break for them. It is so good, you guys. So good that I will die, literally die for these characters. I would do anything and everything, and I possibly will get a specific tattoo that Feyre has on my back when I'm not so chicken and I just decide to get my first tattoo ever. I'm willing to do that because of what this series has done for me and my life and my soul and just everything. It has introduced me to fantasy. I would not be here reading fantasy if it wasn't for Aatar. And if you haven't even started yet, don't even worry about how big and thick the books are. Take it one book at a time and just enjoy the ride because it's one hell of a ride. It's one hell of a ride. Okay guys, we made it. We made it to the end of this video. I am so happy that I did this. I wasn't gonna do one of these videos this year, but I'm happy I did. I hope you get lots of good recommendations from this video. I hope you find new favorites this year. And I'm just so happy looking and reflecting back on 2023, I have to say I had a really good reading year. Even though I didn't hit, again, like my Goodreads goal, I did read a lot of great books, and I was finally introduced to Sarah J. Maas. And because of that, I'm not afraid to read any fantasy, any thick books. Just so excited to see what 2024 has in store for me as far as my reading goes. So there you have it. That's it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye!